Hey Guardians, how many times have you gave it your all during a damage phase, only for your damage to end up looking like this compared to everyone else's? Wouldn't you rather it look like this? I've been raiding a lot more recently, and I wanted to dive into something that you or someone you know may be struggling with in Destiny's endgame: damage. Let me start by stating I'm no sweat lord that is at the top of the charts every single damage phase, but spend a little time with me today so I can give you some actionable tips to help improve not just your damage, but your fire teams as well. Let's jump into it. We can't talk about DPS without mentioning mods, buffs, and debuffs first. This is where you take your damage to the next level. Starting with mods, you want to run surge mods, which are found on your boots. These surge mods are activated once you pick up an orb of power. Stacking multiple copies of this particular mod on your boots produces the following values. 1 stack is a 10% damage increase, 2 is a 17% damage increase, and 3 is a 22% damage increase. Now I know this may seem obvious, but I've made the mistake many times before. Make sure that your surge mods that you put on your boots match the element type of the weapon you're using. Especially if you're changing loadouts between encounters, it's easy to forget that those surge mods don't match anymore. For example, my edge transit is void, so I would want to run multiple void surge mods on my boots. Bonus points if you can get your special weapon to match the element type, so you can double dip on this effect, like here. If you're running a sword, ensure you are running a copy or two of Lucent Blade, which is found in your chest piece, as this will increase the uptime on your heavy attacks by lowering the charge time for the sword. There are seasonal mods that now boost your damage as well depending on your build. These can allow even further customization and can really give your builds an edge to push for more damage. Pay close attention each season, as they do change, and now we are getting multiple rows added for each season. Moving on from mods, we're going to talk about buffs and debuffs now. The following empowering buffs boost your damage, but you can only have one active at a time as they do not stack. When possible, try to have one of these on when you're in your damage phase. The empowering buffs include Lumina, the exotic hand cannon's empowering buff, which is a 35% buff. Radiant, whether it's from Well of Radiance or other sources, is a 25% increase. Weapons of Light is also a 25% increase, and in Warlock's Empowering Rift is 20%. Remember, none of these empowering buffs we just discussed stack, so it really is only important that you have one active at a time. Transcendence from the Prismatic subclass stacks with the empowering buffs, as well as surge mods that we just previously mentioned. And finally, the other stacking damage buffs would include any of your weapon perks that boost damage, such as Explosive Light, Vorpal Weapon, Bait and Switch, etc. In addition to empowering buffs, you can also apply one global debuff for each target that causes them to take more damage. The easiest methods to achieve this are as follows. A Hunter Super, the Deadfall Tether, or Tractor Cannon apply the same amount of debuff at 30%. Weaken from Void Grenades, if you're running Prismatic or the Void subclass, provide a 15% debuff, but only when you're running the following two fragments. On Prismatic, it is Facet of Dominance, and for the Void subclass, it is Echo of Undermining. Both of those fragments have to be slotted in order to get the weaken effect from your Void Grenades. The Prismatic fragment, Facet of Courage, increases the light ability damage when a target is affected by a Darkness debuff, for example, slowed, severed, frozen, unraveled, or suspended. This adds an extra damage boost that stacks with the global debuffs as well. Combining these mods, buffs, and debuffs will significantly boost your DPS numbers during damage phases. It's important to coordinate with your team, which we'll discuss a little further in the video, as to when you're using these buffs and debuffs, as you can accidentally waste some of them if you're not careful. Next, let's talk about weapons. Choosing the right weapon type for the encounter can really make or break your DPS, and with so many choices, it can be overwhelming at times. In most cases, your DPS strategy is going to revolve around your heavy weapon slot. In the current meta, if you need burst damage, using rockets or grenade launchers with perks like Explosive Light or Bait and Switch are your go-tos. You'd mainly want these for short fights and short DPS phases such as the Explicator and Root of Nightmares. But if you're in a situation where you need more sustained damage, more like longer damage phases like Oryx. Weapons like linear fusion rifles, Whisper of the Worm, Microcosm, or even machine guns, albeit they may not be the best choice, really excel in these areas. But I don't want you to sleep on your special weapons either. These can add a huge amount of damage to your damage rotations when used properly. Fusion rifles, sniper rifles, or even the new exotic Choir of One can really pack a punch, especially if we pair that weapon with our heavy, if our heavy has something like auto-loading holster or reconstruction, like in this example here. Special weapons can help supplement damage if you're low on heavy as well. Some other great examples would be fusion rifles that have controlled burst or vorpal weapon, or even reservoir burst for the top half when paired with envious assassin. Or if you're using a sniper rifle and you can really hit precision hits well, a sniper like Succession with reconstruction and focus fury would be really great on bosses where it's easy to hit precision hits. So far we've talked about mods, debuffs, buffs, and weapons. The next section I want to move on to is talking about supers and abilities and how those are weaved into our damage phases as well. The game has a few standout damage dealing supers that you want to use during DPS phases to help maximize your damage. One and done supers like the Nova Bomb on Warlock, or Blade Barrage, Celestial Nighthawk, Golden Gun, and Gathering Storm on the Hunter, and Thunder Crash combined with Curious of the Falling Star and the new Twilight Arsenal on the Titan are popular, so you can get back to using your guns as soon as possible. But this doesn't negate the support supers such as Bubble, Well of Radiance, and Tether. They serve a vital purpose in damage phases also. Weapons of Light and Radiant increase your damage output, and Tether debuffs the target, allowing them to take more damage, as we previously discussed. Coordinating when to use the Well, Bubble, or Tether is massive in increasing your overall output. A great non-example is here. Notice, we did not communicate and we wasted 2 Wells on Golgoroth at the same time. Not very useful. Abilities are also important, as they can provide boosts to your DPS as well when woven into your weapon damage rotation. They potentially also can provide debuffs given the right circumstances, which we discussed earlier. This allows you to increase your damage further. Knowing when to use your abilities at the right time can increase your overall output more than you would think, even though the numbers may seem insignificant. So we've covered a lot of ways that you can increase your personal damage for each damage phase. The next couple of segments we're going to talk about how you and your fire team can both ensure that you are maximizing your damage potential. So let's move on to positioning and timing. A lot of teams lose damage because they aren't properly positioned, or they panic and rush during DPS phases. Positioning is key, or this could be you. For example, if a boss has a short DPS window like the Explicator or Iryut from Crota, make sure that everyone knows where they need to be and is set up with their weapons before the phase begins, so everyone stays alive and is ready to do damage when the time comes. This takes practice and communication. Also communicate who is going to stand where if you're using weapons like rocket launchers and grenade launchers. If you're dead, all the prep that you put into increasing your damage means nothing. And don't strafe around in front of your teammates. Please don't be that guy. Timing is also key. If you can't dump your supers at the right time, you're wasting potential damage. If a boss goes immune or moves around, wait until they're stationary before letting loose with your heavy weapon or supers. Or, if the boss is nearing an immune phase, like in this example for Crota, save your super for the final stand, which is the last little bit of the health bar. This will help ensure that you cross the finish line successfully. And finally, coordination. It's one thing to have the right gear, but maximizing DPS requires your entire team to be on the same page. Communicate when you're using your supers, don't stack them unnecessarily, and make sure your debuffs like Weaken have as much uptime as possible to maximize your DPS. Remember, a well-coordinated team will always outperform a disorganized one, even if the individual DPS isn't as high. Remember, Destiny is a team game, and no one can carry the load by themselves. Here's a play-by-play of a damage phase where I remembered most everything we discussed. 1. I have my Surge mods on. 2. I have used Transcendence before beginning the damage phase. 3. I have tossed a Void Grenade out to weaken the target. 4. I then use my super, which is Void, and is also buffed by the Seasonal Artifact mod we saw earlier in the video. 5. I safely utilize my grenade launcher, which is auto-loading, and rotate with Choir of 1 until the phase on the War Priest is done, which is also getting a boost from the damage from that seasonal artifact mod, because he is weakened. 6. The fire team coordinates who is using Well of Radiance for Radiant, and we successfully complete the damage phase. And that wraps up today's guide on maximizing DPS in Destiny 2. With the right weapons, mods, and coordination, you'll be able to burn down any boss the game throws at you. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more Destiny 2 tips, clips, and strategies. Leave a comment on strategies you and your teams use or particular setups you've been running to put out some serious damage. Also, you can come hang out with me live on Twitch at Dad Gaming Co. The link will be in the description. I stream almost every Wednesday and Friday night doing some kind of raid with buddies of mine starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.